The first-generation Range Rover Sport L320 debuted in 2005 and was produced until 2013. In 2010, it underwent a facelift with revised front fascias, headlights, bumpers, and taillights, and new wheel designs. The interior received new multimedia and slightly improved material quality. The car measures 4.78 to 4.84 meters in length, with a wheelbase of 2.745 meters. The trunk holds 535 liters, 1,757 liters with the seats folded. The interior is spacious for 5 people, with comfortable seats and good visibility. The quality of materials and fit are high for the time, although the leather and plastics show signs of wear over the years. Suspension: double wishbone front, integral link rear, hydraulic steering, permanent 4-wheel drive with central differential and reduction gear, standard air suspension with height adjustment up to plus 27 centimeters off-road. Gearboxes: 6-speed ZF automatic until 2010, then 8-speed ZF after facelift. Manual transmission was not available. The best choice is the 3.0 TDV6 diesel, the most durable, economical at 911 liters per 100 kilometers, and dynamic. The petrol V8 is fun to drive, but burns 15 to 25 liters per 100 kilometers and has high maintenance costs. Avoid the 2.7 TDV6, timing and turbo issues, and the most powerful compressed V8s, high oil consumption, expensive repairs. Common diesel faults: 3.0 TDV6, timing chain stretching, replacement 1,200 to 1,800 euros, turbines, regeneration 600 to 900 euros, EGR, DPF, piezo injectors, regeneration 300 to 500 euros per set. 2.7 TDV6, problems with camshafts, turbochargers, dual mass flywheel. 3.6 TDV8, carbon deposits, swirl flaps, turbines. Petrol V8, 4.4, oil leaks, problems with vanos, thermostat, water pump. 5.0 oil consumption, problems with timing, carbon buildup, injectors. Supercharged, additional compressor, repair 1,500 to 2,500 euros. Air suspension, leaks in the bellows, compressor, and valves. Bellows replacement Euro 400 to 700 per axle. Compressor 600 euros minus 1,000. Frequent suspension errors, vehicle sagging. ZF6 and 8-speed gearboxes. Durable with regular oil changes every 60,000 to 80,000 kilometers. If neglected, jerking, slipping. Regeneration Euro 1,800 to 3,000. Bodywork: corrosion of sills, wheel arches, undercarriage, doors, and trunk lid, especially after facelift. Paintwork is fragile. Frame and side members corrode if left unprotected. Electrical: BCM, SAM modules, problems with multimedia, parking sensors, adaptive bi-xenon lights, central locking, alternator. Drivetrain: transfer case leaks, shaft joints, center differential lock. Nearly 20% of these cars are sold damaged, while prices for functional vehicles range from 7,000 euros to 19,000 euros. What are the successes and failures of the first-generation Range Rover Sport? Is it still worth buying, or should you ditch the cheap luxury SUV? The Range Rover Sport debuted in 2005 and was built on a shortened frame from the Land Rover Discovery 3, which was also a breakthrough model in the British brand's lineup. Following the relatively simple Discovery 2, customers received a car with changes similar to those from the Defender I to the Defender 2. Packed with electronics and comfort equipment, the model gave life to the first Range Rover Sport thanks to the compatibility of many parts, which is worth remembering when thinking about buying. At its debut, the Sport resembled the large Range Rover L320 in appearance, and its equipment wasn't significantly different. Calling the Sport a small Range Rover was therefore no disrespect, and for those not particularly familiar with cars, both cars looked and felt exactly the same. Only the Sport cost about 70% of the price of a real Range Rover. The Range Rover Sport is sporty in that it's smaller, more agile, and handles better around corners. But Land Rover hasn't forgotten the most important thing: its off-road capabilities. In this respect, the Sport remains unmatched in its class, despite its name. At one time, it was also an SUV designed to compete with models from German manufacturers, among others, not only in Europe but also in the United States. Even today, the car feels modern enough to match the latest models, and in terms of ease of use, it may even surpass the new Range Rovers, where almost every operation is performed via a screen. The experience is even better in the facelifted models. The car handles very well, although its suspension comfort isn't on par with the Range Rover or even the Discovery if it's fitted with high-profile tires. The Sport often used low-profile tires on large rims. The Range Rover Sport's structure is a frame construction typical of off-road vehicles, which contradicts the myth that it has a monocoque body. However, the Sport was built somewhat differently, as the body itself is so rigid that it forms a single supporting structure with the frame. This is why many publications refer to it as a space frame, which is untrue, but consistent with the overall body concept. Unlike the Discovery 3, on which the Range Rover Sport was based, this one comes with air suspension as standard. It was an option in the Discovery. Contrary to popular belief, the entire suspension isn't interchangeable. Only some components can be carried over from the Discovery. Nearly every Sport is equipped with active anti-roll bars, and every one has hydraulic power steering. The four-wheel drive system is classic Land Rover, a permanent drive system with a locking center differential and a self-locking rear differential. However, its operation relies primarily on the traction control system, which excels in the conditions this model was designed for, not the conditions imagined by off-road troglodytes. Also standard are a low-range gear and the terrain response system, which allows you to select the type of terrain. The electronics take care of the rest. First of all, it is important to understand that unlike popular cars, cars such as the Range Rover Sport are divided into three categories in terms of their technical condition. The first are well-maintained, properly serviced examples which command the highest prices regardless of model or year. They boast a service history, not necessarily from a dealership, and possess value. Buying such a car isn't the same as buying a Toyota with 50,000 kilometers on the clock, but it's definitely the safest. The second category includes imported cars whose history is unknown, but someone has maintained them reasonably well, so they're in good working order. It's likely that something needs repairing that the previous owner no longer had the desire or money for, but it's not as cheap as the dealer says, although the dealer may not even be aware of the impending repair. In this case, buying 20,000 euros cheaper doesn't necessarily mean saving that much, because that 20,000 euros may be the cost of the repair. The third category consists of the cheapest cars that drive, turn, and brake, and look decent enough, but the warning lights are only doesn't work, and to get them in order requires spending not just a few thousand, not a dozen, but tens of thousands of euros. Or it might not be worth it at all, and the only option left is to scratch and drive what you bought. Contrary to appearances, this isn't the same as any other car, as the costs of maintaining and repairing a Range Rover are often disproportionate to the car's price. It's important to understand that you may be buying a car for tens of thousands of euros, but it once cost hundreds of thousands. Servicing costs don't decrease with the vehicle's depreciation, and in this case, you might feel a bit disappointed that you spent 30,000 euros on a car, another 30,000 euros on urgent repairs, and then you have to spend a third as much to get it back on track. This is where opinions about the reliability of these cars diverge dramatically. For some, a 2,400 euro service is considered normal because they know the vehicle's value, while for others it's an unaffordable price because they thought they were buying an Audi. The Range Rover is expensive to repair and maintain, and there's no way to change that. If it weren't, the price differences wouldn't reach 400 to 500%. The car's main problem is its electrical system, which suffers from the poor quality of its components. The wiring itself is so fragile that after about 10 years, many cars required a complete overhaul of the wiring and replacement of entire sections of the wiring harness. Motors, switches, displays, lights, and modules, in short, anything that carries electricity, are susceptible to failure. It's also worth considering the car's water resistance. Although the manufacturer boasts of its exceptional weighting capabilities, in practice, something most often stops working after driving through deep water or washing the engine. Many people are wary of air suspension, having a perception of other cars as lacking service, lacking parts, and high repair costs. However, one of this model's greatest advantages is the easy availability of parts, and high-quality OEM replacements are not overly expensive. For example, a shock absorber with air spring costs around Euro 300 to 420. Virtually all components can be replaced or repaired. If the car goes to the wrong workshop, it's also easy to damage this suspension. Virtually every Sport also has active anti-roll bars, which comes as a surprise to many workshops that don't handle vehicles of this class. The hydraulic system can have leaking issues, but that can also be repaired. Without going into too much detail, 6-speed ZF automatic transmissions are considered durable and trouble-free, although, of course, in the more powerful versions, if someone has a heavy foot, they can be damaged. Since 2011, the 8-speed ZF transmission has been used in V6 diesels and is known for being just as durable, if not more so. Automatics shouldn't keep owners of these cars awake at night, although servicing is still a concern. Repairing the rear differential locking mechanism can be problematic, as parts for remanufacturing are virtually non-existent. The repair can be accomplished in two ways: either buy a used one and replace it, or simply disconnect the locking mechanism. The opposite is true for the front mechanism, which can be purchased complete and new. Corrosion isn't as much of a problem for the RR Sport as it is for Japanese off-roaders, but many examples have bodywork components that are blistered or even corroded. The frame is usually covered with a layer of rust. It usually lasts longer than in Japanese models, although much depends on how the car is used. An interesting problem is swelling wheel nuts, which, likely due to incorrect torque, no longer fit the standard wrench. Replacing them with new, higher-quality nuts is a very good idea, as if you need to replace the wheel, you'll have to call roadside assistance. Replacing the spare wheel itself can be a problem, as the unserviced mechanism for lowering it from under the car may be so blocked that it cannot be done. The Range Rover Sport features several engines shared with both the Discovery 3 and the big Range Rover. Generally, the opinions about the engines are that petrol engines are good but very fuel-hungry, while diesels consume half as much but are twice as likely to break down. So the choice can be difficult. The 2.7 HDI diesel engine has received mixed reviews. Some have driven it for 400,000 kilometers without any major problems, while others have had their crankshafts crack or crankshaft bearings spin after 100,000 kilometers. This engine is considered more durable and less expensive to repair, thanks to the injection system supplied by Bosch, unlike its predecessor, which was supplied by Siemens. A good choice in the diesel range is the 3.6-liter V8 developed by Land Rover in partnership with Ford. This cast-iron construction, though the cylinder heads are aluminum, is considered very durable. However, it's important to have the car serviced regularly, as minor issues can arise, such as cracked thermostat housings, intercooler air ducts, or exhaust manifold seals. Some repairs are minor only in theory, as replacing an exhaust manifold gasket, for example, requires either removing the engine or removing the bodywork. Ultimately, replacing a part worth a few dozen euros costs several thousand euros, and if the user is aware of the procedure, they will also have the entire car inspected, and a bill of 2,400 to 3,600 euros shouldn't surprise them. So the problem with this durable engine is not the design itself, but the labor costs for repairs.